already March, but I'm very glad that it is. So welcome, everybody. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'll start off with public comments. Do we have any comments from any members of the public?
Yeah, this is Gurdeep Rar. I just wanted to say you guys are doing a great job, and I just wanted to say hello to you. And I know, it's very difficult for the young children, for the people, because the schools are closed and the library is closed. I'm sure that you are thinking about it and making plans that how we can safely increase the use and when we might actually safely open it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
It is. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much.
Any other comments? Thank you. Any other comments? All right, we will move on to approval of the minutes from the February 9th meeting, which is our last regular monthly meeting. Did everyone have a chance to review those minutes?
Yes.
Any questions or comments? All right, then I'll ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Or second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. And then we had our special board meeting, which was on February 19th. Anyone have any edits or corrections to these minutes? Okay, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Robert, for doing double duty this month. 2 sets of minutes. We appreciate it very much. All right. Next is approval of the February vendor report and financial review.
Hi, everyone. I don't have anything in particular really to point out about the February spending, other than to say that we have closed out on the 2020 spending. So we are now solidly into 2021, which happens usually about this time of year. But if you have any questions about any of our transactions, I'd be happy to talk about them.
All right, anyone see anything as they reviewed the vendor report? All right. Is that it, or is there a little more at the bottom? Make sure we're going to scroll. We might as well scroll all the way. Fantastic. All right, then can I get a motion to approve the February vendor report?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. Well, moving right along, the next item on the agenda is old business, although we've not really listed anything there. Is there any old business we should discuss, or is everything else somewhere else on our agenda?
I think at this point it's somewhere else on the agenda.
All right. Can we go back to the agenda? I think we were committee reports next. There we go. Well, this is a different, I feel like we were just looking at a different agenda, because we did want to talk about the Advocacy and Communications Ad Hoc Committee, but and we can do it under old business, or we can do it under committee updates. Let's go with old business then. I think that was the first one on the committee updates list in any event. So as we've been talking about for the last couple of meetings, we're going to create an Advocacy and Communications Ad Hoc Committee charged with really looking at how we as a board can better advocate for the library within the community. That is one of our clear charges as a board of directors. We've talked about ways to be reaching out to the community, and this board, I think, would really benefit from a group looking at that question closely. Ralph and Rose have both volunteered to participate. I believe Chris has as well, although I don't think Chris is with us right now. Is there anyone else who's got an interest in participating in that group as we move forward? If so, let me know. I think we will ask that group to get together over the next month to start thinking about their task and their charge, as we've discussed. One of the things that they may recommend is the permanent creation of an advocacy and communications committee. At this point, it is an ad hoc committee to look at the question of what policy changes we might be able to make within the library. Any questions about that process or comments?
How would we be initiating this meeting?
I'll communicate by email with everyone who wants to participate, and then you all can work on scheduling a time together. I'll probably attend that first meeting.
Great.
Great.
All right, let's move on to committee updates then. Is there a building committee update?
Not necessarily a committee update, but I did want to share a few exciting photos of the signage that we will be updating in relation to the Next Chapter project. This was scheduled for installation at the end of March, and we've been working with the local graphic design firm Tingles and the Wanakee Speed Pro business for installation. This was also part of our new donor recognition. So these are mock-ups. This is not an actual installation yet. This is photoshopped. So here you can see we're replacing the directional signage that's hanging from the ceiling with in-space name recognition and using our color for better wayfinding. So this is an update example for the Mac reading room. Here's an updated example for the Leonard Archer meeting room. And then Marion Archer is on that other side, the right-hand side, where it's divisible. Other directional signage includes the top of the stairs here. This is another mock-up. Meeting rooms, letting people know how to better navigate the lower level. That's been a continuous challenge over the years in this facility. And if you recall, this door is right at the bottom of the inside elevator, just around the corner from the lower level reference desk and the bottom of those stairs. This door was previously closed, and we experimented for a while with opening it and found it to be very useful and a lot easier for folks to navigate the lower level instead of having to go all the way back up the stairs, exit the building, and then come back down the meeting room side through the lobby. So we'll put directional signage there as well. And then I did also want to share, I don't have it in the same format here, but I can grab it. Our meeting room, or rather study room signage. This is another mock-up. So this plastic placard there, those are coming down, and we will have each study room designated with a number and then the donor name under here. So you could see, for example, study room 2, the Polisi family. Would be an example there. Other things that we have signage for include the restrooms, of course. And then also the elevators will be wrapped with a design that matches the color and shape of the circles that are used as the graphics. So this has been a challenging project to work on remotely, lots of details, and we're excited to get this finalized. Really gives the building a finished look. We also have, of course, the in-space name recognition for the youth services area and the artist gallery. So that's really something exciting to look forward to.
This looks great. I'm just curious, is there any likelihood of foreign languages in terms of wayfaring? Do we need it?
Great question, Rob. We discussed which languages to include. Spanish would be our first choice. Because we're going very minimal and it's mostly one words, or we have a graphic, like a restroom graphic to indicate men and women's stalls, we decided to forego an additional language for the directional signage right now and focus on the multi-language word murals that we have a design for, but we do not necessarily have a specific donor yet. I have a couple people that are interested in those. That's the, if you remember, right in the front lobby before you walk through the doors into the library proper, there's a wall right above those double doors that would say welcome in multiple languages. And then downstairs, if you walk through this door to the left, right when you come down the elevator through the lobby, then there's a word mural there that would say gather in multiple languages. And we worked with Mandy Morstadt, I believe her name is, from the school district to determine which were the top 20 languages or so spoken by families in Middleton. And we have designs for those, but those are not included in this round. So that's where we're really hoping to recognize languages. And then we'll also have our like library brochure, library card application. Those will be in Spanish.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. They really do look sharp. That's fantastic. I think that's an excellent question too, Rob, that, maybe at some point we could do some kind of a pamphlet or a sheet in a different language for wayfinding within the building as well. It's something to keep in mind as a possibility down the line, but I think those look really sharp. Glad to see the old plastic go.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, anything else on building or questions for Jocelyn?
Yes. Could you elaborate on the most recent problems that occurred at the building?
Sure, facility stuff. Yep. So we've had 3 fairly significant issues within the last month. The first was a major snow pileup on the roof that had a variety of spots leaking through the air compressor units. Luckily, this happened in the middle of the day and during the week, and our facilities guys over at, well, really inspection department, I suppose, over at City Hall, were able to address it and got up there with a snowblower actually. So that's something that we need to keep an eye on moving forward each season in the winter. It happened right after a really windy day and we had a big snow overnight, and as it melted, it was coming through the roof in several spots in the ceiling. We did have some damage to materials, but luckily we caught it fairly quickly and it was pretty minimal. The second was the air handling unit in the furnace room broke a coil. This was a significant and pretty serious flood. On a Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock, the fire alarm went off. I respond to the fire alarm. We use a service for that, Capital Security. And most oftentimes when the alarm goes off, it's the door alarm. So I responded to that at 3 o'clock, came into the building, had a really hard time shutting off the alarm. So I knew it wasn't a false alarm. So I did the procedural sweep of the building and found that there was a really significant spray of water that was coming out of one of these coils from the ceiling and spraying all over the circuit board or circuit breaker box and the main unit for the fire alarm. So that's what was triggering it. It was not something that I could stop on my own. I just had to let it go until help arrived. We're lucky that we work with a couple of vendors, including ADS Mechanical and RIP Sewer, that know the library very, very well. Andrew with ADS Mechanical has worked on the library facility for approximately the last 20 years. and help to install the second furnace that we have. So he's a lot more attuned to the ins and outs of the mechanical than anyone at City Hall, and especially myself. So that was an emergency weekend response. He was able to turn the water off, fix it with some welding, and about 5 hours later, we were good to go. The third thing just happened recently. This is somewhat of an ongoing problem with our sewer drain. The restrooms on the main level have backed up on a fairly regular basis since I've been here the last 4 years. We have trouble snaking the pipe out to the main. The restrooms on the main level for the public are as far away from the main as they can get. So that's a pro tip when designing a building, put the restrooms as close to the sewer main as you can. So you're not trying to snake it 150, 200 feet out to the street. So while Chris Ripp was in the middle of snaking the line, a PVC 4-inch pipe broke. And so not only did we have sewage backup from the restroom out into the carpeting in the public area, but then we had a flood happening through a light can in the ceiling on the lower level with sewer water. It also was pouring into my office. It was all over the floor. It was quite an emergency, but luckily Chris was still there. In order to access that pipe, they had to sawzall a fairly big hole in the ceiling because there's no ceiling access. It's not a drop ceiling, it's finished. So there's a big hole in the ceiling right now. He was able to repair the pipe, and I'll be coming back on Thursday morning to make sure that the line is clear. We also had to call ServPro, who is our emergency response vendor, and they came in and did mold mitigation right away. So we've had fans going since Friday afternoon, and it's looking like we'll probably need to replace about a 4 to 8 to 12 foot section of the lower level ceiling because of mold. And then there's a lot of steam cleaning with the floor that needs to happen. So this is a really good example of an aging building and things that happen even though we stay on top of regular maintenance. We have the sump pump regularly handled. Chris Ripp knows the building well. We can tell him exactly which toilet, and he knows what we're talking about. And it also is a good demonstration of how the Next Chapter project does not necessarily address anything mechanical or structural. It's really just aesthetics and functionality with the use of the space. Again, luckily that sewer issue happened on a Friday when City Hall staff was still available to assist. And we have good vendors that know the building. I don't know how much these costs are coming in yet, but the sewer issue was enough damage that we filed an insurance claim through the finance department and are waiting to hear back from an adjuster. Our deductible is $1,000. So I'm hoping that this is significant damage enough to move forward with the claim.
So you would recommend a new building, perhaps?
Well, yes, for a variety of reasons, not just the structural and mechanical, but it really goes to show how well, I shouldn't say how well, how the building has been used so heavily in the last 20 years. And when you're building a new building, never go with the cheapest bid.
Always good advice.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments?
Should we be working on a plan for a new building?
There is a plan for a new building through the community campus project and committee.
But I think, your question is an excellent one, Art. We've all known as we were working on the Next Chapter project that this was something to, hold us for some period of time, but that a capital campaign is surely on the way. And, you know, it's never too soon to start planning for that. In fact, I think we ought to, now that we have reached the wonderful milestone that hopefully we'll talk about here in a minute when we get to development of completing the next chapter project, that it really is time to turn our attention to how do we fundraise for and plan for a new building.
Mhm. Yep, and that ties right back to the Advocacy and Communications Ad Hoc Committee and the advocacy that can happen as on the trustee level for a new building. You may get questions or comments about, well, what do we need a new library for? Didn't we just redo the library? And so speaking to the need for mechanical and structural as well as square footage is a big piece of the messaging. So that's something that we can strategize more around as we hopefully reconvene the community campus committee soon.
Great. All right, well, let's move on to development and the announcement and publicity over the last couple of weeks about the completion of the next chapter project.
Yay!
Yay!
Thank you all so much for your support throughout the last few years with this project. It's pretty tremendous to be able to say we've successfully completed a major campaign during a pandemic. If you haven't seen some of the announcements online yet, we've been slowly rolling out some donor spotlights, and I'll let Rebecca or Rose talk a little bit more about what those are looking like.
I'm really excited. I've spoken to 2 families already about their donation. I talked to the Penns, who are just this phenomenal couple, and they have donated for a study room. And that is still in the works. We're getting it. It should be coming to Rebecca very shortly. And then I also spoke to Liz Dannenbaum, who worked at the library with Paul Nelson, and then organized a fundraising for a bench to honor Paul. And so that was exciting too. So I've gotten those 2 done, and I've spoken to, or I've communicated with 2 of the others, but haven't actually gotten to do the interview with them. So it's in the works. It's been exciting, and it's just fun to learn what these people are about and why they donated to the library. They are very pleased with how efficiently it runs, how safe it is, how great it has been during the pandemic, and are very, very impressed with you, Jocelyn. And yeah, so I don't know what else you would want to hear.
Chris has also spoken to some of our naming rights donors too, and so we'll have some of his profiles to share over the next coming weeks. But also, I'm interested in hearing from anyone who's donated to the campaign. They don't have to be major donors. You know, we had kids who donated $2 bills and pocket change and things like that. And I think that those donors are also really important to celebrate. So as you're talking to people about the Next Chapter campaign, if you hear stories, if you hear input from people about what the library means to them and why they wanted to donate, you know, let's connect with those folks as well and share their stories too. I think that would be even better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've learned a lot from this campaign, and in some ways we can look at this as a prototype for what could be a larger multi-million-dollar campaign, along with a possible referendum. It's given Rebecca and I a chance to work very closely with our finance department in coordinating all of the back end processes and details that take a really long time to learn and understand. And put together in a transparent and sustainable way. We've also learned a lot in working with an organizational support organization like the Madison Community Foundation, and what we can do on our own versus what we need support for, where we can utilize tools like Little Green Light as a donor database and leverage tools like that on our own. So as we move forward this year, I think, further discussions about the future of the development committee, a chair position for the development committee is definitely something that we'll want to talk about as we work on our stewardship now and then look to the future for a bigger project.
Great.
That's good.
All right, any other questions or comments? Let's move on to liaison update. City Council, Robert.
Okay, well, we touched base a little bit on the community campus. That was started before the pandemic hit everything. And so obviously things there have really not started up again since the pandemic started. So the plan for the community campus is to continue trying to develop ways that the city can look at all of the municipal properties downtown and figure out a better solution. You know, what to do with the very old city hall building, what to do with the very old senior center building, and what to do with the more recent library, which obviously still has its own problems and has kind of can't, in addition to things breaking, even before things were breaking, the changing uses of the library changed the needs of the spaces in the library. So all of that is kind of being worked on, but I will say that I don't have any updates because I don't think anything's really happened in the last few months. Really, the biggest things that I've heard at the library recently is, at the library, at City Hall are, what is our plan of action for opening up and dates there, and so I know there was talk about we're kind of seeing where everything's going, but maybe starting to open up, was it maybe in April timeframe, or yeah, I think that was what it was. And then the other thing that I've heard at City Hall was and other places is what can we do as we look to the future? What can we do to maybe better handle people in the community who don't come downtown very often because their homes are way out on the northeast side of the city? And I know that's something that we've talked about in the past, and whether it's physical buildings, whether it's more bookmobile type, getting books out into the public. I know that there's some concerns that it's difficult to have everybody come downtown. What can the city do to better address the needs of people where they're at? And I know we have a lot of things already happening there, but I know we don't have any further buildings yet. So I would be very interested in hearing, as we continue to work on these various developments in the future, how we can, maybe address some of those needs in the city. But I don't really have any good updates. That's more what I'm telling you is what I think is library related, but I don't have any solutions for anybody. It's just kind of what I've been hearing in my role as city council person. So any questions or specific things you would like to know?
I have a question for you, Robert. I looked at the material that you sent us about the committee of the whole meeting that happened a month or so ago.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of information in there about the strategic planning process for the city. And I know we've talked about it a little bit here, but I'm wondering with some of the kind of stuff you're saying, how you think that process, which to me is a really overarching of all of the city entities, how you think that has the potential to affect the library and what we do?
That's a great question, Cindy. You're right. I think it gives us guidelines. It's somewhat aspirational, but it also gives us some hard and fast guidelines for where we as a city should try to move forward on multiple fronts, whether it's transportation, whether it's community building, whether it's all these different topics that are in there. It's not very prescriptive. It doesn't tell us exactly where we will go next. It kind of gives guidance as issues come up to say, here's how we can, here's the types of things we should be thinking of to make sure that we are trying to be more inclusive in our offerings as a city, how we can try to improve transportation and things like that within the community, especially things like public transportation. Getting into specifics, I don't know what the answer will be yet, because like I said, it doesn't give us like a clear marching orders of what the next step will be. It just tells us, it helps point out where maybe we need to put more focused attention on certain areas, and helps guide us to do that in conjunction with all of the other, hopefully the other priorities of the city, and helps us, maybe find ways to balance those priorities. But the short answer to that, to my rambling, is I don't have a clear direction of where the city's going next with anything with the strategic plan, but it is a great tool to help guide us as we look at what's important to us in the future. It gives us some guidelines for helping us round out our decisions in a way that tackles hopefully multiple problems at once. So I don't know if I'm really answering your question, except to say that it's a good tool to give us things to think about as we make our decisions on a case-by-case basis.
Just to add to that,
Thanks. Well, I was a little surprised at the amount of detail there was in what was in that packet. So I was curious about your read on it. So thank you.
Sure, and I just, yeah, you're right. It is a huge document, hundreds of pages, and because of that, it's even hard to get your head around everything at once. So it kind of is a great reference and something to kind of read up on certain sections as certain topics come up. But I think maybe Jocelyn or somebody else wanted to speak. I heard.
I think it
Sure.
was Jocelyn. Yep.
I was just going to add that Vanderwall and Associates is the firm that was chosen, I believe. Right, Robert?
Yes.
Finalized?
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. And yeah, I guess I was talking. Yeah, you're right. There's the community plan and there's the strategic plan. And I may have been answering questions more about the community plan, or the strategic plan is something that's, again, going to try to tie together all the plans that we currently have, all the guidance that we currently have, and that is Vanderwall is going to help us try to put more of our work into practice by finding ways that we can take a problem and solve, find a solution that solves multiple problems at the same time we solve the problem at hand. So for instance, we want more public transportation, but we also, if we're doing more with public transportation, we want to say, how does that affect people who don't have no transportation? How does it affect people who don't get to downtown very often, so they can't get to the library easily on a Saturday because buses aren't running on a Saturday? So there's going to be, the strategic plan is going to help us try to figure out how we can basically, and I hate this phrase, but kill two birds with one stone type of a thing, solve multiple problems. As we try to solve one problem, we can maybe have an overarching solution that addresses 2 or 3 or 4 problems at the same time. And it is Vanderwall.
Robert, there was a great deal of citizen input 2 summers ago into what the strategic plan should look like. And was Vanderwall one of the major people, one of the major companies that were there when we were doing that?
See, and that's where I was probably confusing people. The strategic plan.
I think that was something else, Rose. I think you're talking about the community campus when that document was being put together. I think they're undergoing the strategic plan is a whole different process that hasn't been going on that long.
Correct. And then I was confusing the issue for everybody, so I apologize for that. Yeah, the strategic plan is a newer thing, and Vanderwall was just selected for this, maybe even just earlier this month or late last month. So it's very recent that we selected Vanderwall to help with the strategic plan and to help pull all of our disparate plans, hopefully into kind of one cohesive whole.
Robert,
Always a good plan.
for the campus plan, do you feel we're making as expected progress given everything that's going on, particularly the pandemic? Or is there an opportunity to push things forward a bit by an email or a phone call or a letter? It feels like it's glacial to me.
It is glacial. I'm not sure what a phone call placed would do, but because, everybody's kind of
Tapped out.
working as hard as they can.
Yep.
But again, it does help. Emails and phone calls and whatever do help us shift where our priorities are. And certainly, if you rightly believe that the community campus plan has stalled and you want to see that, have more people, more resources put toward that, a well-placed email or call can't hurt. And you can send those to me and I will forward them to other people, or you can send them directly to other city staff or city elected officials as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, for all of the time everybody spends on all of this. That's fantastic. We'll
Thank you.
keep watching it, and something certainly for the Advocacy and Communications Committee to be thinking about as well on the community campus and where we go over the next few years. I'm going to move on to the Friends. Chris was not able to join us tonight. He did give us a report on the last meeting. The Friends were happy about the completion of the Next Chapter campaign and congratulate Jocelyn and everybody at the library for meeting that goal. They were happy to see they were the largest donor, and we certainly do recognize the Friends as being a significant contributor to Next Chapter and everything we do at the library. To no one's surprise, obviously their revenues are way down this year. They don't have the bookstore. Memberships are down too, and so they are hoping as weather improves and things start to open up that they may be able to increase those memberships for 2021. So revenues down more than 50%, but they do have a pretty healthy reserve balance and have been able to continue supporting the library until book sales can return. One of the things that I think Chris has shared with us before and we're all aware of is we're looking a little bit in terms of loss of leadership within the Friends. The current president is stepping down. They have not found someone to take her place. A group of board members have kind of agreed for the short term to split up her responsibilities, but they are actively looking for not only leaders for that organization, but members of the Friends board. One of the things that occurs to me, is that I think as a library board, we could try to play a role there to assist the Friends in building up the personnel and volunteers that they need to really take the next step and to move forward as we come out of the pandemic and reopen the library. Whether there might be any members of our board that would be interested in joining the Friends board. There's nothing that says we can only have one. Chris is our official liaison. But if there's folks that had an interest or time in joining the Friends, I think that would be great. Or if any of us have know people that are looking for an opportunity to make a meaningful difference in the community and might be interested in volunteering with or becoming a member of the Friends board, I think that would be really helpful. Any other thoughts or questions about the Friends? All right, we'll move on to the district. Mary Beth.
Lots of changes happening. As of our last meeting, we had just brought back our elementary students 2 days a week in a cohorted model. Middle of February, we brought back our middle school students, and this week our high school students return. So for some of our high school students, it's been a year since they've stepped foot into our high school building. So it's exciting to be able to welcome them back. 2 days a week in that cohorted model. So half the students 2 days, the other half other days, in order to ensure some spacing for them and some other strategies for traffic flow of the students throughout the building. A lot of talk recently as more of our staff who became eligible as of March 1st to receive a COVID vaccine, as more of them are becoming vaccinated, there's more talk now about, do we increase the amount of in-person instruction for our students, particularly at the elementary level? There was some talk about that last night with our school board. No decisions have been made. Some local districts are starting to discuss or announce that they've decided to bring some of their younger students back 4 or 5 days per week as more of their staff have become vaccinated, based on the info we're getting from Dane County Public Health, Madison, Dane County, and other research studies that they're seeing as far as vaccinations with the staff and lower incidence of transmission. Schools are proving to be, with proper safety protocols in place, safe spaces to be able to have more students in more frequently. So more to come on that. And lots of movement happening. If you've been in the neighborhood, to see just some really great progress with the construction project at Middleton High School. It's just pretty incredible. So good pacing on that as far as timeline and kind of with that work going. So this phase will complete, which is the addition. Once this phase, which is kind of like on the north side near the PAC and the fields, that's done, more of the instruction will be moving into that part of the building, and then the older part on the south side will be remodeled. So kind of multiple phases happening there, which is quite an undertaking when you think of a school over 2,000 students, and school is, you know, mostly still happening with all the staff and everything. So I did meet with Jocelyn in between our last board meeting and this one to share what have we learned as a school district with our reopening process, what protocols might be helpful for the library as we consider a slow reopening. I think there's a big difference between our school staff and the library staff as far as access to vaccinations right now, and that plays a big role in possibly what our library reopening looks like, but sharing a lot of our strategies, protocols, and communication methods that we kind of talked about. So that's my update from the school district.
Great. Well, as a parent of 2 high school students, I'm thrilled. I also really love the idea of putting a roundabout in the middle of the Four Corners area at the high school. Any of you who have high school kids know there's this area where they just all mash together. I hope that will remain.
That was my son's suggestion too. Why didn't we have this before?
Why didn't somebody think of that before? And then those kids will probably learn how to drive in a roundabout, or we can at least hope that they can. So thank you, Mary Beth, for all of your work with that. Anyone have a community update? I'll do a very brief one, which is we had the March meeting of the Good Neighbor Festival Board last night. Happy to report we are proceeding and hoping and planning on having an event at the end of August. I think, you know, as numbers have gotten better, Dane County is now up to 500 people outdoors, and hopefully we'll be in even better shape in August. It will look different. There'll be masks and distancing, and it won't be as big of an event as in some years past, but very excited to potentially be able to bring that back to the community. I'll give you a little sneak peek. This isn't publicly announced yet, but the theme will be all together now, that we're trying to help us bring our community together. This has been an incredibly difficult time, and hope that there will be some reason for and ability to celebrate at the end of August. So mark your calendars. Let's move on then to equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts. Rose, you want to give us any report?
Yeah, just not a whole lot going on there regarding the library. A lot of the meeting was dealing with the low-income housing that's going up. There was discussion about more homes as opposed to all the apartments, and that people needed to be coming out with voices in favor because of some issues that are going on with one man who wants his house to be a duplex, and he's having some real problems with the neighbors there. So a lot of the conversation was regarding that, but then I did give the update on that Art shared with us last time about how poor the bus system was to the library. And Mike Davis was somewhat surprised that there's so little access to the library, and he said that he would make that report known to Mark Opitz, and so that's where it is right now. And yeah, we need to figure out some way to get the buses running, and that is a problem because the funding for the buses, I guess, is pretty limited.
Fantastic. Thank you. You know, one of the things, not that we needed to make this agenda item even longer, but I was involved in a law group through the American Bar Association, but we just renamed a committee Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging, which I thought was a really wonderful name to talk about what really we're trying to do. And so something for us to think about for the future, because that's really what we're after, is belonging for everybody at the library and in our community. So thank you so much, Rose, for the time you're spending doing that and for your advocacy. All right, let's move on. Jocelyn, Director's Update.
In addition to the Middleton Community Equity Team, Middleton staff have been undergoing all of the Ripple trainings in the month of February and early March. And we've had a really great representation and participation from Middleton in those trainings. After each of these, we have staff write a 3-2-1 report. This has kind of become our standard thing over the last couple of years after staff attend something. And that's 3 things that you learned, or perhaps 3 resources, 2 things that you learned, or perhaps 2 resources, and then 1 thing that we can do right away. And so the internal staff equity team will be reviewing these and then coming forth with perhaps some recommendations that would involve the trustee level of engagement, like maybe some policy review. So those have been really great, and they've been a good way for staff to all really establish some foundational understanding around normalizing vocabulary and language and the way that we talk about race, as well as beginning to look at some internal personal transformation. So that way we're able to then offer more meaningful transformational, not just transactional offerings to the public. So the second piece of the Ripple project is that public piece. And later this year, we'll be working with other Dane County libraries on what that might look like with the use of the funding from the Beyond the Page endowment. So this year is really focused on how can we take care of and train and normalize our greatest asset as a public institution, which is our people, so that we can support community efforts towards racial justice moving forward. So that transformational versus transactional, or as we keep saying, and you've probably heard me say, inch wide, mile deep, versus mile wide, inch deep is where we want to be going. We also are hoping to connect with MOM, Parks and Rec, and the school district at a city level to look at how we can leverage our assets, especially in terms of funding for more public education. So this is slow and deep work. It often is emotional on a personal level, and we're hoping for some transformation. So I think we're making good progress. And I think that in terms of next steps for trustees, a follow-up to that Juneteenth statement is still something that we should really be focused on. There's a lot of examples out there as to what that might look like. And I think we have some really great tangible things along with some conceptual aspirations that could really be communicated in a meaningful way. Any questions on that before I move on to reopening? Okay. We've been talking reopening at the system level, the county level, and especially internally with our staff at the management team level, as also with departments and what it really means for part-time staff and frontliners. We want to try and open as coordinated with other libraries as much as possible, especially the larger ones. Smaller libraries have been able to do things on an appointment basis or a smaller level because there's less of a volume. We want to make sure that we're at least coordinated within a window of time so that we're not inadvertently shifting major operational procedures and volume of work in one direction that could affect things like delivery and just lines out the door. So we are planning right now for the end of April. We are still not included in any of the vaccine plans. This is still a really big risk in terms of frontline staff who are not necessarily protected or who don't have direct access to healthcare. One of the pieces of advice that I gleaned from Mary Beth was, well, two things really. One being that it would be really great, and I'm trying to coordinate this with some of the other libraries like Verona and Sun Prairie, to have a healthcare specialist or someone from the public health department talk to staff in terms of the level of risk and risk mitigation, along with where the science is at right now. We started off this pandemic really focused on formite and surface transmission. And after a year's worth of research, we've really come to understand from a science-based perspective that air particles is really where the risk is, and that the virus load on surfaces is fairly minimal, and cases that have been tested, that have been tested positive from surfaces are very, very minimal. So this affects our quarantining that we've been doing. All of these things that we put a lot of time in to make sure that we're following the best science up front, we want to make sure that we're undoing them with the same caution and mindfulness that we did when we created them. And we're communicating to staff the reasons why we're doing this, and we're able to back it up with facts. So that was one thing. Another one was our messaging. The school district did a really amazing job with getting their messaging out ahead of time, so students and parents knew what to expect in terms of where to enter, where to exit, what the day was going to be like, how to move through the building. And so for the rest of the month and into the beginning of April, we'll be working on what that's going to look like and how we can get that messaging out to the public. We know that we're going to continue to have a high demand for curbside. The demand for curbside versus in-person services, we still don't know what that's going to shake out like or how it's going to evolve over time as more vaccines are distributed in the community. So we are going to focus on one thing at a time, because offering curbside in the facility at the same time as in-person services is proving to be too challenging. So we'll do, right now the plan is to offer curbside services Monday through Wednesday and in-person services Thursday through Saturday with an evening in there. So we have in-person services at least one evening a week and curbside services at least one evening a week. And then we can scale back up throughout the week from there. We also feel like that's sustainable as we are able to access vaccines for staff. And if we were to have an outbreak, we can roll it back to curbside, which is what we've been doing and we know works. So we want to make sure that as we're moving forward, we're continuing to have the ability to build on what's working so that we're not going back and forth with services and creating confusion and frustration with our communication. We've learned from the other libraries that have tried to reopen that's been very difficult, and it's a really fast way to burn out the staff. So we want to continue to move forward without having to step backwards too far, too fast. The service model for that express service Thursday through Saturday is the same as what we were planning for last summer. That will be an encouraged visit of no more than 30 minutes unless you need to use a computer. Computer services will be available. We started those last week on Wednesdays and are learning about how to deliver that PC support in person. So if you know anyone that needs to use a computer, Wednesdays are the day that we're offering those right now, and then we'll have open computers once we get to the in-person service. We'll still have all of the furniture removed at this point to encourage that browsing, and the tables will be filled with a display extravaganza. So it'll feel a lot more like a bookstore, and we'll really be pushing the browsing and moving people throughout the building and avoiding that cluster at the front. We'll also have things like a greeter at the front door, welcoming people, setting the expectations for the visit, ensuring proper masking. Masks will be required in the building. If someone is not able to wear a mask or refuses to wear a mask, all of the services that are available in the building are available either through curbside or librarian's choice or remote Wi-Fi. Or curbside printing pickup. We also have measures in place for staff, like plastic shields over and sneeze guards around the service desks. We're working on what the approach to the service desk is going to look like. We've rearranged stacks for better social distancing and have beefed up the self-check situation so that we can do things like use a foot pedal with the self-checks and not necessarily have to be touching things quite so much. So that's where we're at with reopening right now. Most other libraries, including Verona, Monona, and Sun Prairie, are looking also at the month of April. Madison is looking a little bit further out. They also have a lot more to coordinate with multiple facilities throughout the city. So that's where we're at right now. And I hope that we can share the first phase of a written plan and some of that messaging at our April meeting. Any questions on reopening?
I have a question on the computer sign up for Wednesdays. People do need to call ahead and sign up for that.
Yep, we're taking reservations right now. We're hoping that we don't have to take reservations when we open for in-person and that we can just have it free and open and easy like we did before. That was one of the really nice things that I noticed when I was interviewing for the director's position in Middleton, is that the computer access truly is open. You don't have to have a library card to use the computers. You don't have to make a reservation. You can literally come into the library and sit down at a computer and start using it. And that's a really exceptional service to be able to offer. And we want to continue that as we move forward with Express.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Jocelyn. Is that it for your report?
That is it for right now. I'm
Okay.
sorry that I didn't have that February roadmap document put together. February is also always a short month and it ends so abruptly,
Right.
and it ends abruptly with a variety of floods. It didn't quite get pulled together.
No worries. That was a great report and we appreciate all you're doing. All right, let's move on then to the 2021 adjacent county reimbursement request.
Can I ask Jocelyn one curiosity question before we move on? I read that article in the paper on Sunday about the Madison Library where people were talking about the library being open. And one thing I noticed in there is the gentleman they quoted had been on the library board for 17 years.
Mhm.
And so I was curious about when the statutes changed about the length of time you could serve on a library board.
You know,
I don't know if you even.
I did. I read that too. I wondered that myself, actually. And I'm not sure if he was serving as like the school district liaison position, which doesn't necessarily follow those same
Oh,
restrictions.
yeah, I didn't even think about that.
That was the only thing that I could think of. I also found, just a quick side note, the article to be quite misleading. And you know, they said that they don't have a plan. I can guarantee you that every single library across the country at this point has some sort of plan. So we're all planning right now. Everything looks a little bit different with each facility within each municipality. And it's important that we try to work together as much as possible within our jurisdictions so that we're offering those services and not impacting inadvertently one or the other, making our own independent decisions. That's all I'll say about that article.
Thank you. I thought it was interesting as well.
All right. Get the county reimbursement request.
This is our annual formality with our adjacent county reimbursements. Per state statutes in the state of Wisconsin, adjacent counties pay each other for library services. This is where you will see the budget line in our 212 fund under operating for our intergovernmental revenue, right alongside the Dane County reimbursement. So the three forms of intergovernmental revenue include the transfer in from the general fund from the city of Middleton, direct Middleton taxpayer dollars, Dane County reimbursement based on those formulas of performance and square footage and inventory that the council signs a resolution for remaining tax exempt. And then the adjacent county reimbursements, which we see right here. We also have, I believe, Rock and Dodge County that are also adjacent to Dane, and those are not listed here because they were zero. So usually Sauk is our highest reimbursement. Columbia is the winner this year. So this is a reflection of out of county users using the Middleton Library specifically. And then South Central Library coordinates this for all the libraries in the South Central Library system. And it requires action and a signature from the library board president.
All right, any questions before I ask for a motion?
This is Robert. I know in past years when the dollar amount was pretty low, we would circle no for, and I don't remember what the cutoff is, but Jefferson looks like it's only $16.58. Is there any thought or recommendation that we would circle no for any of these?
That is entirely up to the board. You know, $16.58 isn't much. I think in previous years it's been even less than that, like it's been less than $10, if I recall.
This year we have one that's about that amount. It might be the same county. I think in past years we've foregone some of them when it's like $2. I mean, they're cutting a check. It's not a huge process, but $16 certainly isn't that much.
But if we've done that amount in the past, and that'd buy a book.
Yep, that's a good way to look at it.
It's true. That's true. And it is higher than, I do recall ones that were $2 and $3 in past years. So this is over 10. Maybe that's our cutoff. Maybe we say, well, we just mark them all yes and move on.
All right, any other questions?
Just out of curiosity, it looks like about $17,000. Last year, it was about 13,000. Just curious why. Is that a significant difference, or is it in the ballpark and not significant?
Usually this number continues to, it has traditionally increased each year. You can see right here in red that we should not use these estimates for budgeting purposes, and they are eligible to be paid out the following year. This is just a direct reflection and correlation to use. So they have some sort of formula that I'm not aware of the exact details of that makeup, but that translates into dollars. So the more people that use the Middleton Public Library specifically from each of these counties, then the bigger the reimbursement.
Okay.
How did they do that when the library's been closed?
They do that based on the status of the account in our ILS system. So in your library account, it indicates your what's called a PSTAT, and that directly relates to your voting district and your county. And so they're able to, and I've made these reports for alders before, I think at our joint council friends library board meeting, where we can see where the use and card holders are in each district or taxing or voting district across the city, or perhaps the system if we really wanted to go big with it. So I really feel like this is an indication of choice and use more than anything. People that live in Columbia and Sauk counties are choosing to use the Middleton Public Library over their home library, or perhaps this is the closest one to them, or they work within the Middleton and this is on their commute home or something like that. So for whatever reason, they're choosing to use the Middleton Library over another option within their home county.
So use in this case is curbside because they can't come in the doors.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. It's directly related to physical circulation.
So are we paying Madison?
Dane County handles. We don't pay Madison. Sorry, was that your question, Rob?
Yes, I was just wondering if we were paying other counties, other organizations.
Sure. Dane County will pay out the other counties. The Middleton Public Library or the city of Middleton does not pay. I'd have to get a more detailed explanation from that, exactly how that works from the system.
All right.
This is Robert. I'd make a motion to request that reimbursement from these adjacent counties.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, great. Jocelyn, is this the file? I should have this somewhere, right? Or do you want to send it to me again to sign it?
Yep, I can sure send it to you again for a signature, no problem.
Great. All right, well, our next meeting is April 13th. April, it's going to be beautiful, I hope, and hopefully we will be talking about very imminent plans to reopen the library. I think we're all very excited for that day to come. I imagine, hope that many of the library staff will be able to be vaccinated by then, certainly those at highest risk, as well as the rest of us on this call. So keep on being safe, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great meeting.
Bye.
Bye.
And we're done early.